All right, folks, welcome in. This is JE Live, and we got a jam-packed show. It doesn't mean it's going to take super long, but we just have a lot to get through. A lot that we found out today. Just getting some updates. Nothing crazy, but at the same time, maybe it is. Before we dive into it, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Also, be sure to follow me on all social media. You can see below at JK Bogan. All right, so welcome in, everybody. Sean McVay and Les Snead had some pressers today, finally. And we had some interesting news that we got. I mean, right off the bat, I didn't know what to title this. It's definitely an update. I just put Rams eyeing extensions for Matthew Stafford, Cam Curl, and Tyler Higbee. And after I had really already kind of set my game plan for the show up, and I had scheduled it, then Les Snead had things to say. So we're going to go over everything in a jam-packed news day for the Rams. And keep in mind, free agency is right around the corner, so it makes sense. We're here. We're finally here. March is when things really kind of take off. And so I wanted to talk about just going through it in order of what I saw. I made notes. Shout out to Wyatt Miller, Adam Grossbard, and Stu Jackson, as well as Nate Atkins. That is where I got most of my info from. Hope everyone is doing well, by the way. Sorry to be all formal. I like doing this, hanging out. What's up, Kareem, Ruiz? How's it going, guys? Paul just says, go Rams. Yeah. All right, so Matthew Stafford. Let's start off from the roster management and free agent section of this whole thing. Matthew Stafford's entering the final year of his deal, as we know. And McVay noted that they have a great dialogue and will work through his contract status. Les Snead confirmed it remains a year-to-year arrangement, but that doesn't rule out a potential contract extension. So interesting stuff there. Not necessarily saying it's going to be like a 4-year deal, but they could come to an agreement. Maybe it's a 3-year deal and there's no guaranteed money, and they just that's what the arrangement, I'd imagine, is going to be. I still think it's going to be like 2 years, $105 to $110 million. You want to give him a raise. You want to show that you care about him. He just won the MVP, for God's sakes. And you guys just had a pretty, I wouldn't say heated, but it was a fiery little, back and forth there, where I know they can say now it was never in the cards, but I was told it was definitely not a guarantee he was coming back. It really looked like he was going to the Raiders from multiple people I talked to. So good thing that things worked out in that way, but this is what we're talking about. So Matthew Stafford, I have no issue. I have no worry. I have no concern. Matthew Stafford is going to be the Los Angeles Rams starting quarterback in 2026, and that's all I care about. For the future, that's another discussion. Is he the 2028 quarterback? Is he 2027? Is he probably not 2028, but is he 2027? That's a 2027 question, okay? We can touch on that, but that's not something I want to discuss. I want to spend a lot of time on. I want to spend time on a team that is not, if they're not the best team in the league, they're one of the best teams in the league coming into this season, and they just are off a back-to-back with 2 seasons in which they lost on the final stage. They lost to both teams that won the Super Bowl. They're right there. It's time to get over the hump. They already did it once. I'm not going to try and sit here and reprogram your brain acting like the Rams haven't won the Super Bowl yet. They have, but they got to win it again. There's no excuse. They put together too good of a team not to win this time around. So Matthew Stafford, we don't really know too much. We just know they're working through a contract status. Okay, Jimmy Garoppolo got some news today. The Rams, quote, absolutely want to re-sign the backup quarterback. McVay stated he loves Jimmy, would absolutely love him back. He also acknowledged the reports that Mike LaFleur may be interested in him as well, and made a joke about him stealing away his quarterback. They did just cut Kyler Murray, and it is what it is, but I've seen some people saying that Kyler Murray could be an option for the Rams. If it's cheap enough, I wouldn't mind him as a backup. Anybody who would mind him as a backup, I don't know what the deal is. If he's signed for cheap, because keep in mind, he's going to get paid a lot of money. He's going to get a lot of that money. Arizona's eating a lot of that money. What would be the dilemma if the Rams sign Kyler Murray to be the backup? There's no dilemma. You shouldn't be against a Kyler Murray signing. He's a backup quarterback. He's a backup that I think, quite frankly, is way better than a backup. I don't even know if he's much of a reclamation project. I don't, first off, I'll just address this. I don't think Drew Petzing is a good play caller. I said it all year. I didn't think he was a good play caller. Took him until week 11 to realize that Michael Wilson was good. Newsflash, I thought he was good way before that. I'm sure many of you did. But I don't think he was a great play caller, and I think he kind of, I don't want to say he's the reason. I do want to give Kyler some blame, but Kyler Murray is not a bad quarterback. He's not. Is he elite? No. Could he be really, really good in the right system? Yeah, I think so. He can still make all the throws. The issue is his height. How does he read a defense? All that stuff. All that stuff. But no, I'm not too worried about Kyler Murray if he ends up being a backup. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I wouldn't mind bringing him back, but I don't know. To me, Jimmy is going to go and try and fight for a job somewhere. He knows he's not starting over Stafford. As much as he'd like to stick around and win a Super Bowl, this guy has only played one game the last 2 years. Like, he wants to go. He's getting older. He wants to go and play. He's seeing Joe Flacco at age 40 starting for 2 different franchises. He wants to do that. He's nowhere near 40. But it's time for him to start getting some opportunities. Then we got just a quick acknowledgement, Cam Curl. McVay expressing high praise for the free agent safety. Simply stating, we love him. I mean, I've heard we love Cooper Kupp. Didn't mean Cooper Kupp came back. We love him doesn't really tell us anything. It's a chess match. That is a smart move. That is gamesmanship. You can say that you admire the player, but when you're in a contract negotiation, he didn't exactly come out and say, we love him, we're trying to extend him, we're going to extend him. He didn't do any of that. He just said, we love him. Sounds good, but in theory, it doesn't really tell you a whole lot. You already knew they loved him. You've heard their pressers throughout the year. This isn't anything new. Tyler Higbee. His future remains uncertain. He's deciding whether to play in 2026 or retire. And if he returns, McVay confirmed that the Rams are interested in bringing him back. It's interesting. See, I had initially, when I was doing my game plan for the offseason and trying to project what the Rams' mock offseason would look like, I didn't have Higbee, and then right before I went live, I put Higbee in there because I just had an inkling he's going to come back. This is the last hurrah season, in my opinion. Stafford could very well come back, but guys like Tyler Higbee, like guys like Davante Adams, don't be surprised if they retire after this season. They want to win a Super Bowl before they go out on top. And honestly, if Rob Havenstein wasn't dealing with the injuries that he was, he probably would want that too. So then we talk about Davante Adams. I encourage you to listen and not overreact what I'm about to tell you. Because despite a $28 million cap hit scheduled for 2028, McVay noted that the team has not yet discussed a contract restructure with Davante Adams. There's going to be a lot of people who hear that, read that, and immediately say, oh, they're not going to restructure Adams. They're going to get $28 million. Here we go. Not going to have much of an offseason. That's not what's going to happen. He's not playing on the $28 million cap hit. He's just not. It makes no logical sense. He also, by the way, wasn't fully healthy at the end of the season. Like, those hamstring, that could end up being an issue this year. The Rams are not going to have Davante Adams on a $28 million cap hit. They're just not going to do that. But the key word in this sentence is yet. They haven't discussed a restructure with him yet because they don't have to. They can make moves now. They can make moves next week and then call up Davante and his agent and hammer out a restructure. They don't have to make a move before free agency. I don't think a lot of people understand that. It doesn't work like the way when you're using those the off-season simulators. Just because you have to restructure in those simulators before you sign anybody doesn't mean in real life you have to restructure before free agency. That's not how it works. If the Rams need money to do what they want to do, they're going to find ways to get that money. By the way, speaking of which, they're going to have money to do things that they want to do. Snead addressed that basically they're going to focus on free agency, the draft, and then they'll worry about their currently signed players getting extensions. They did mention Kevin Dotson and wanting a long-term partnership with him. Love to hear that. Dotson is a Ram, dyed his hair Rams colors. He just, since they traded for him that day, and I'll never forget, I went live and I was stoked. I loved him coming out of Louisiana Lafayette. I had a higher grade on him than I did on his teammate, whose name is totally escaping me right now, which is funny enough. Robert Hunt. There we go. But Dotson was one of those guys, when they went out and got him, I was stoked. Because I'm just like, he fits so well. And the Steelers were just changing their offense up. They didn't think he fit the blocking scheme, so they moved off him. Fine. That's a perfect fit for the Rams. And sure enough, it's been a perfect fit for the Rams. So the idea of renewing Dotson's deal, which is something that I suggested they should do, that makes me excited. Now, we also got some information on the exclusive rights free agents. So these are tendered at basically veteran minimum deals. Justin Diedish is back with the Rams. Harrison Mevis is back with the Rams. And Xavier Smith is back with the Rams. Now, there'll be people that complain that I just said Xavier Smith. He cost us the NFC title game, all that, whatever. It's the veteran minimum. Like, it's not a big deal. He still has to make the 53. And Xavier Smith is not that bad. I understand you're upset. I wasn't a huge fan of his botched punt return either, but I mean, he's not a bad player, and he's not a bad returner either. You can upgrade. They might, but there's no reason to justify not bringing him back on the veteran minimum. That's just my thought. So, coaching staff updates. We got a Cliff Kingsbury update. McVay basically said, look, he's a good friend, and the style is very different, but just because it's different doesn't mean it can't be better. And McVay really kind of expressed the idea of trying to grow and learn even from Cliff Kingsbury, and he's excited to work in collaboration. That's a sign of a coach that's just going to continue to get better and better and better. He'll still call the plays. I do think Sean McVay will enter, for any Dragon Ball fans out there that know Frieza, Sean McVay will not hit his final form until he gives up his offensive play calling. I just think you do too much as a head coach to be able to be your best all the time while having to call plays. Like someday, Mike McDonald won't be able to call plays for the defense. He's just going to be a guy that manages the game, manages a team, builds a culture, and that's going to be that. Doesn't mean that they can't have their hand in the offense, defense, special team. It does not mean that. But play calling, I do think hurts you. I do think it holds you back. It can help you because you're like hyper control of the game, but at the same time, you're hyper control of the game. That could be a problem. You could be too close to the action and have blind spots. And we already know McVay has blind spots, just like anybody. Nobody's perfect. Aubrey Pleasant. McVay described the decision to move on from Pleasant as not an easy decision, but one that was in the best interest of both parties. Now, this is interesting. I don't know what to make of this, really. I mean, you could look at it in one hand. Aubrey kind of got scapegoated here. Okay, his secondary sucked at the end of the season. This is Aubrey's fault. He was the defensive backs coach, and, he was the pass game coordinator on the defensive side. I do think a lot of this, they kind of just took, Aubrey took most of the blame. Shula didn't really get blamed, and I think Shula deserves some blame here too. I think people bring up the Lions firing Aubrey Pleasant as why Aubrey didn't work out or whatever, and he's not good, and starts questioning how good of a coach he is. I think he's a great coach. I've talked to people who have played for him, and obviously one of them, but I've talked to people who've played for him, and they said that he's one of the best people to be around. Very good coach, knows what he's doing, and he's got the leadership qualities of a head coach. I'm just speculating. I don't know for sure. I think the reality is Aubrey Pleasant had way too much power. He really had developed some great relationships, and I think that led to him being let go because he's also stepping on the toes of Chris Shula. If you ask me, when a guy is that well respected in the locker room, a guy has that much power, it's a little surprising to not make him a defensive coordinator ever. He's been with you for 7 years. So I'm not saying that they made the wrong decision with Chris Shula. I'm not. But I don't think it's crazy to assume. I don't want to assume. I don't think it's crazy to speculate that just maybe, Aubrey and Chris Shula, they were stepping on each other's toes. And I have it on good authority. Aubrey had a different vision for the championship game. He wanted to start Emmanuel Forbes, and Chris Shula wanted to start Darius Williams. So we know Darius Williams gives up. I mean, he's kind of lost it at this point. I think he's still a solid player, but he can't play on the boundary with no safety help. And, of course, he gave up the bomb to Rashid Shaheed. And, well, that I think Seattle didn't lose a game all year when they were the first team that scored. Well, there you go. So that's why I typically like to just add some context. And I'm not saying, keep in mind, I'm not saying that everything I say is 100% the only accurate statement. Okay. I understand there are different sides to different stories, but I like to add context here because you guys don't come here to just hear my opinion. And just like that. This is not a tweet. Every single bullet point of information that I'm giving out, I'm going to delve into it and come up with my own opinion on it and really add some facts, add some knowledge, if I have sourcing, do that. And this Aubrey Pleasant move is just speculation. I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm just telling you, if you connect the dots, you saw a guy that had a lot of power in that room, and then you see Chris Shula, and he's the defensive coordinator, and Aubrey's the assistant head coach, and Aubrey's really liked and really, really well respected, and the defensive back room, they seem to really like him, maybe even a little bit more than, Shula. I'm not saying that is the case, but I'm saying if that is what happened, if that is the conclusion that you can draw, well, it's easy to see how maybe this just didn't work out. And maybe Pleasant was still, I don't know this, but maybe Pleasant was kind of like, what the hell? I should have been a defensive coordinator. And he wants to go. And now he feels like, you know what? I'm not going to get a DC job here anyway. I didn't get one. Shula got one. I didn't get one before you brought in Brandon Staley. So, yeah. So I try to see, all sides of it. Am I out on Shula? No. Do I think Aubrey Pleasant's the greatest coach ever? No. But do I think Aubrey Pleasant is a good football coach and gets a bad rap? Absolutely. And if you're basing it on the Detroit Lions, they had Aaron Glenn. Their secondary was garbage whether he was there or not. Aubrey Pleasant wasn't the reason their secondary was bad. The Lions secondary is almost always bad. They always give up tons of yards. And Aaron Glenn wasn't a good defensive coordinator, just like he's not a good head coach. So I see a lot of people use that Lions, argument. Oh, well, he got fired from the Lions. Congrats. What are the Lions doing? They kept Dan Campbell and let Ben Johnson go. Look how good they're doing right now. Anyway, next up, we got former players transitioning to coaches. You got Robert Woods. You got Brian Allen. You know that. They've transitioned over the last 2 years. McVay joked a little bit. It was like, look, we're getting older now, and our new players are starting to infiltrate the staff. But here's the thing. McVay made it clear. He didn't bring them in to do them any favors. He believes in their coaching capacity. He believes that they can be really good for what they're looking for, and they already have familiarity and experience from within. I like the hires personally. I didn't see it as anything like that. I didn't see it as, doing favors. I didn't see it as a nepotism thing. Nothing like that. Favoritism. I didn't see that. I saw it as Brian Allen has won a Super Bowl at this team. So has Robert Woods. They know what is required of a Sean McVay football team. They know what's required in the receiver room and the offensive line room. I think it's smart, and I don't think Sean McVay's done. At some point, we'll see what happens. Maybe Cooper Kupp comes back over and he becomes a wide receiver coach. Maybe, at some point, maybe Akello Witherspoon coaches the defensive backs after his career. Like, these are relationships that Sean has built, and I think people just kind of Robert Woods got traded, and then we talked about multiple times in this show, there were multiple avenues where the Rams could have gone and re-signed Robert Woods, but didn't. And I think too many people look at it like, oh, the Rams just don't like Robert Woods anymore. No. His relationship with a lot of the players was there. The Rams love Robert Woods. They never stopped just because they weren't interested in him as a football player, once he had gone through the injuries and whatnot, doesn't mean they weren't interested in him and as a person. So guys that you forgot about, don't be surprised if they just all of a sudden pop up. Does Havenstein join the coaching staff at some point? Who knows? Whitworth? I don't know. He's killing it in TV, but I know Big Whit could coach. He'd be a great offensive line coach. But anyway, enough of that. We're getting to the fun stuff, okay? We're getting to the fun stuff. We got a mock draft Monday for you on a Tuesday because yesterday it just did not work out for me. So we'll have that coming up in a separate live stream at 7:45 Eastern time. That is 4:45 Pacific time, aka Rams time. And once that finishes, or around the time that finishes, we'll be gearing up for the NFC West Roundtable. So 3 shows tonight. Hopefully you're enjoying it. And I don't sound too nasally, because I was getting that in the comment section, like, bro, take some whatever, Vicks. Or so anyway, let's talk about the draft philosophy. This is the biggest thing of all of it. And it's not that I didn't think that the Rams viewed it this way, but it's just nice to hear, because this is what I've been saying. The Rams value over need. McVay emphasized that the Rams will not reach for a need in the draft. The focus is on acquiring players that the staff, quote, has a lot of like and love for, end quote, and for whom they have a clear developmental vision for. Love that. That is exactly what the NFL draft is for. Regardless of what anyone tells you, that is what the NFL draft is for. You know why? The Rams, they went need over luxury, whatever you want to call it. Do you know when they did this? They've done this before, but do you know when it really occurred to me? Greg Robinson. Was Greg Robinson a better prospect than Aaron Donald? Maybe some would say yes. Me personally, I felt like it was Donald and Clowney. And Khalil Mack also was there. I didn't think Greg Robinson was a shoo-in to be number 2. Like, I knew they were going to draft him number 2. It was probably the worst kept secret. My thing about Greg Robinson is that it was always about how great of a run blocker he is. You know, you had Auburn's run scheme, and it was, he's a mauling, he's a really good athlete. But then you watch him in pass pro, and you saw issues with his game. And, like, that's why, like, my father was huge on Jake Matthews. Is Jake Matthews still playing? I'm pretty sure he is. I'm not going to look what Greg Robinson's doing because that's for TMZ. Jake Matthews is 34 years old, and he's still playing the game of football at a high level, and he is still on the same team that drafted him. That was my father's pick, okay? He wanted Jake Matthews and Aaron Donald. Now, had the Rams done that, had they taken Jake Matthews at 2, who knows if Donald falls to 13. A lot of things change. But the point being is that I would have taken Donald at number 2, okay? And left tackle was a need. It was a need. Like, Jake Long didn't end up working out. They needed a left tackle. So they went with Greg Robinson. They went high upside. They had the Auburn connection. You know, they went with Greg Robinson. They actually passed on Aaron Donald. The Rams passed on Aaron Donald, as crazy as that is to say. So why do I bring that up all the time? Well, here's the deal. If you are going to have X amount of draft picks that give you 4 years to 5 years, depending on if you're drafting in the first round, 4 to 5 years of control of a player. There's my MLB coverage leaking in there. Control. That's a big thing that we say when we're covering baseball. But it is a fair way to put it. I have control of a player for 4 years when I draft him. If I draft him in the first round, I have control of them for 5 years. What is control? It means I have 5 years. I have that 5th-year option. It's an option. I don't have to pick it up. But if I want to keep them for 5 years, I can. Now, as we've seen over the course of time, players have become very aggressive in getting deals as soon as they are eligible to get deals. So, 5th-year option isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. That said, if you only have 7 draft picks a year, that's what you're given. The Rams always end up having more, but that's what you're given. Everyone's given 7 picks a year, 1 for each round. If you're giving 7 picks a year, that's only 7 players that you can add that are cost effective in a salary cap era. Don't you want to make sure that the 7 players you're adding are going to help in some capacity, whether it's they're going to play right away, they're going to have success, or they're going to give you some flexibility down the road? Like, value over need is the only thing that should matter when you're a good football team. When you're not a good football team and you're picking number 1 overall, you have to take the quarterback. It's why the Rams, despite the fact that they needed a quarterback, they were in a position where they could have taken the best player in the draft in Ndamukong Suh, or they could have gone with Sam Bradford. They chose Sam Bradford because they needed a quarterback and potential franchise quarterback. If they were a really good football team or just good football team, they would have already had their quarterback. They wouldn't have been in that position. And if they weren't in that position to begin with, then they could have taken the better player in Ndamukong Suh. I don't have to tell you who was the better player overall when it was all said and done. Ndamukong Suh was the better player. Sam Bradford was the need. Now, I understand that's number 1 overall. It's a little bit different than 13th. But the point stands. Good teams have their roster pretty much figured out before the draft. That does not mean that draft picks can't win starting jobs. It doesn't mean draft picks won't have roles, but you're pressing 22, you're starting 22, and your key players, key depth, those need to be figured out before the draft. The good teams do, the bad teams don't. The bad teams are the ones that cause all of the good players with high upside to fall in the draft. The bad teams are the reason DK Metcalf fell to 64th overall. The bad teams are why the Ravens and the Eagles every year have guys just fall into their lap because they're reaching on need. Bad teams need, good teams want. There's a difference. When you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you're able to come away with Quinion Mitchell because he just falls down the board into your lap, that's because bad teams reached on needs. Everybody on this, I mean, I wasn't as high on him as you guys were, to be fair. I was wrong. But a lot of you were high on Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean should have gone the first round based on what he was. He fell because bad teams went for need over just the best value. So that's the thing, guys. When I look at this draft, you can say what you will, but I don't think the Rams should just be like, we're going to take the top cornerback at 13. I don't. I think that's a bad operation. I don't think that's how you should run your football team at all. And that's not how the Rams are going to do it. Les Snead, on filling needs in free agency versus the draft, said, quote, if we can use free agency to not be desperate in the draft, we will most likely be better drafters. He's right. It's honestly one of those duh moments, right? But there you go. He's absolutely right. Now, take over. I'm going to disagree on that, but I'm going to hit it on this super chat first. What's good? Thank you for the 5. If Rams give 29 to KC for McDuffie, get a Diami Brown, Jahan Dotson for wide receiver 3, what would you get at 13? Lemon, Delane, Downs, or Kenyon? If those are the best guys available, Lemon and Delane are nowhere near my list when it comes to Downs or Kenyon Sadiq. I like Lemon a lot. I don't like him as much as I initially did because I have a higher grade on Omar Cooper. I think Omar Cooper is the best receiver in this draft. I think when it's all said and done, we're going to be looking at, was Omar Cooper the fastest in the draft? No. Was Omar Cooper the tallest in the draft, the biggest in the draft? No. Was he the sexiest in the draft? Did he have the biggest name? No. But I think when it's all said and done, Omar Cooper Jr. will be the best wide receiver from this draft class. So for that reason, I wouldn't take Jordan Tyson or Lemon at 13. Wide receivers bust incredibly high, first round wide receivers. It's a tough position. And I just don't know, after full reevaluation of everything, I think I would rather go with Sadiq because I think Sadiq, first off, I think he works in the 13 personnel. So say he gets off to a rocky start as a rookie, which I can't see, but let's just say he does. His crutch, his fallback is that he gets to be in that 13 with either Colby, Ferguson, Higbee, or Allen. And then, oh, by the way, Puka Nacua is going to be on the field too. Like, I don't know if I feel like that's not a bad move. Sadiq's also a better athlete than most of the wide receivers coming out anyway. And he blocks better. So that's my thing. Now, I'm also not high on Jahan Dotson or Diami Brown. Brown got the same deal as Tutu Atwell, and he's a lot taller and did nothing with it. Nothing. Jahan Dotson, he's kind of just the throwaway wide receiver 3. Bad offense for sure. I would rather have Jalen Naylor over those two. That said, talking about Delane, there's this misconception that Delane is this blue chip prospect. I like Delane a lot. But if Delane was blue chip, we have to understand what blue chip is. Blue chip is Jeremiah Love. Like a running back, he's going in the top 10. There's no question. We don't know where Delane's going. See, blue chip corners, they're like, they're going top 5. You know that. I don't know if I would say Delane's. I do know. I would not say Delane is a blue chip prospect. I think he is very, very good. When I think of blue chip cornerbacks, I think of Jalen Ramsey types. Okay? I think of Sauce Gardner. Those are blue chip corners. Those are game-changing, game-breaking corners, right? I just can't say, and Patrick Peterson coming out of LSU, I just can't say that he's a blue chip corner. And then, as much as I like Kenyon, I don't think he's a blue chip tight end. So by default here, I would go with the only blue chip prospect I see, and that's Caleb Downs. If Caleb Downs falls to 13, I don't care about any of the stuff I'm hearing about his injuries and all of that. Caleb Downs is a blue chip safety. And I think he could fall if teams start prioritizing the Eamon Worry build and the Kyle Hamilton build, because he doesn't have that. A lot of people don't realize that. He's not high. He's not super whatever. But yeah, I just, to me, I think Caleb Downs is a special player. And if you could get him at 13, it'd be a slam dunk. I think Lemon's good. I think Delane is really good. I think Lemon's really good. And I think Kenyon Sadiq might not even be the best of the four. He might be the worst of the four currently. But I think Sadiq's ceiling is insane. And you put him with Ferguson for 3 years and like, what are we talking about there? So that's my thing. But I think that's a great question. I personally wouldn't give up 29 to Kansas City for McDuffie, but I have to believe it's going to happen. Just everything that I've heard, it just seems like it's a no-brainer. It's a lock. It's probably the worst kept secret. So much so, we had Les Snead say he's open to trading a first-round pick for a, quote, proven player, end quote, and adding an all-pro to the secondary is a big focus. Well, hate to break it to you, y'all. There's not a lot of all-pros that are available. I know, despite people thinking he's an all-pro, Denzel Ward is not an all-pro. But Trent McDuffie is. Now, he's coming off his worst season. The Rams are going to have to take on that fifth-year option. They are going to have to extend him or figure out something there. But I think that's the move they're going to make. I really do. Don't get too comfortable with 29. I think that's going to Kansas City. Now, the question is, and I'm going to give Blake Resac credit here because we talk about it a lot over text, and I haven't really thought about this, but he has, and he keeps bringing up the idea of, well, what if the Rams give up 29 and they give up 13 for McDuffie, but the Chiefs give up their pick? Like, what if that happens? The Chiefs have the 9th pick. So the Rams jump up to 9. Now they're inside the top 10. Now these, this isn't going to happen situations become very possible. If you think about it, the Rams getting into the top 10 are guaranteed one of Reuben Bain, Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, Arvell Reese, Carnell Tate, Mekhi Lemon, Mansour Delane, Jermod McCoy, right? They're guaranteed one of those players. Like, it is a done deal. One of those guys will fall. Sadiq, right? One of those guys will fall. You're going to be getting a really freaking good player at pick 9. And if you want, you could say, what are the Jets going to do? I think the Jets are going to either draft Reuben Bain Or they'll just say screw it and they'll end up taking Sonny Styles. I think they're going to take Bane. Then the Cardinals. What will the Cardinals do? I don't think they're going to take Downs. I think they're probably going to take Jeremiah Love. But there's a chance because there's a need at tackle, and it's good to build inside the numbers and then outside. Inside out is the way to go. Build an offensive line for your quarterback. Maybe they end up taking a tackle. Maybe they take Francis Mauigoa. I probably did not say that name right. From Miami. His stock is super high. Maybe they take him. Maybe they go with a closer in David Bailey. Maybe they get a linebacker in Sonny Styles. They really could go with any of those. I don't know if I see Arizona taking a running back third overall, though. New regime. Not sure I see that. I think they would actually take the tackle. They did this before when they picked third, Paris Johnson. I think they would sure up their tackles. That's how you build your draft. So I think they would take the tackle. So that leaves at pick 4, Titans are heavily favored to get Jeremiah Love. So if the Rams want Love, they'd probably have to get up to 4 and try to convince the Titans not to draft Love. Or they'd have to get up to 3 with the Arizona Cardinals. And the Cardinals would have to move down to 9. Maybe they'd consider that. I don't think so. I think Love to the Titans makes sense. And then the Giants are definitely taking Sonny Styles. At least that's how it sounds. So you have an offensive-minded coach for the Browns that doesn't or does. The quarterback situation's weird over there. But regardless, they're not taking a quarterback this high. You have a wide receiver need. You have a tackle need. I don't see them taking a tackle. What would you theoretically do if you're the Browns? I'm going to give them a receiver, and I think that receiver would be Cardinal Tate, who I'm not as high on as everybody else. Then you have Washington at 7. At 7, Washington, they're going to lose Zach Ertz to free agency. They did draft the K-State guy. I don't know if they'll ever give Ben Sitton, I believe his name is. I don't know if they'll ever give him an opportunity, but he had good tape. Probably going to go with an edge defender or a linebacker. I'll give him Arvell Reese, but they could very well go with David Bailey. And then you have the Saints at 8, and this is like a prime wide receiver or interior defensive line pick. And right here, I'd probably give him Mekhi Lemon. So at 9, the Rams are sitting there. Caleb Downs is there. David Bailey is there. Mansour Delane, Jermon McCoy, like Kenyon Sadiq. There's a lot of talent. So trading with the Chiefs, if they can make that work, that actually makes a lot of sense. So you trade 29, you get McDuffie, but you trade away 13 to get 9. It sounds bad because you're giving the Chiefs 2 first-rounders, but they're giving you a first-rounder in McDuffie. So they'd be giving you 9, and they'd be taking 13. It's not a huge trade-up, and the Rams could negotiate that in it and be like, look, I know we're getting a good player. He's a former All-Pro, but he's coming off his worst season, and on top of that, I have to pay him. You're not paying him. So I'm taking on that, the 5th-year option entirely, and I also have to sign him to a long-term deal. He doesn't come with 3 years guaranteed. That's now a hurdle I have to get over. So because of that, we could see it. I saw Curl re-sign. I was like, are you saying that you want Curl to re-sign, or are you saying that he re-signed? I had to check. Always on my toes. It does not appear that that is anything. Okay, good. Well, not good. I would have liked to see that, but I don't know. Anyway, what was I saying before I said that? Oh yeah, so yeah, getting the ninth pick makes a lot of sense if possible. There you go. I do think they're going to get McDuffie. I think they're going to be locked in on getting another corner. We're going to find out how high they are on Emmanuel Forbes. I still like Forbes. I still want two corners. That's just how I feel. I mean, I would get Jamel Dean and I would get Josh Jobe. Those are my guys. But I mean, I also would get Monteric Brown and Jalen Watson. Hell, just bring the whole Kansas City cornerback room. Jalen Watson, Trent McDuffie. Sign Brian Cook if you lose out on Cam Curl, and there you go. Three defensive backs from the Chiefs. That'd be funny. Anyway, those are just my thoughts. But yeah, y'all, appreciate you tuning in. We got another one real quick. What would you do in the offseason for wide receiver 3 and vet edge? Also heard rumors of Washington wanted to trade down for more picks. Yeah, Washington could be a prime option. If the Rams can get up to 9, that would be an easy trade up to 7. Gets in front of the Saints if you want like Mekhi Lemon. The Saints would probably want him. Also, Arvell Reese or Sonny Styles might be available there. If you want linebacker, the Rams haven't drafted a first-round linebacker since Alec Ogletree. So I don't know if I would be... I'm talking inside backer, but I don't know if I'd be... I'd be shocked, honestly. I don't think that's something that they would do. But what would I do in the offseason? Well, I would sign Jalen Naylor, make the wide receiver room competitive. I would let Jalen know at signing, hey, we're probably drafting a wide receiver. So just letting you know. And I would go after Omar Cooper Jr. in the draft. I think he's the best fit for the Rams offense. He's the number 1 wide receiver on my board. That's what I would do personally. Vet edge, I would go after Bradley Chubb. That's what I would do. I would go after Bradley Chubb. Yeah. I don't know why. I can really see every year I get like, it's not a dream, but I get these like inklings. Like it doesn't always work out. But you look at Carl Lawson back in the day coming out of Auburn. Did you ever just look at him and say, that dude just looks like a Ram? I'm going to give you my guys before we head on out of here of guys that just look like Rams to me. We're going to start off with quarterback. Okay? Drew Aller just looks like a Ram to me. Okay? This isn't just guys that I like. I know I started off with one that I like. You know who looks like a Ram to me in the wide receivers? Chris Bell. Chris Bell just looks like a Ram. It doesn't mean he's the best fit, but it's just guys I just see as Rams. I can't explain it. Tight end, Eli Stowers. I know I said Kenyon Sneak. Eli Stowers just looks like a Ram. Then you got running back. Okay. Nick Singleton just looks like a Ram. And then offensive tackle, I'm going to go with Caden Proctor on this one. Just looks like a Ram. No crazy analysis. These are just like inklings I get. And then for interior offensive line, Jake Slaughter just looks like a Ram. I don't what does that mean? I don't know. I get these feelings. So I like to say them, especially I have a platform. You know who just looks like a Ram? D'Angelo Pons from Indiana. Like archetype wise, I'm not saying that. Pons looks like a Ram to me. Like he's the only corner that I look at and I'm like, Ram. Doesn't mean that I want them to draft him. Doesn't mean that I'm saying they're going to draft him. But every time I see D'Angelo Pons come up, I just see Ram right there. How about safety? Who looks like a Ram? I will actually go as far as to say Kamari Ramsey looks like a Ram. That's the name that comes up when I'm thinking of like the Rams. Interior defensive lineman. The guy that looks the most like a Ram, honestly, like I don't know if they're going to get him, is Caleb Proctor. So I have 2 Caleb Proctors for the Rams. That's crazy. Caleb Proctor from Southeastern Louisiana. I don't know. I can just picture him on the Rams. Edge defender, okay? Not saying they're going to get him, but a guy that I just see a Ram. Maybe someday they will. I don't necessarily think they're going to get him this time around, but who knows? David Bailey. Maybe it's someday they give up a first-round pick and they acquire him via trade. He just looks like a Ram to me. And then last but not least, the linebackers. The linebacker that looks the most like a Ram is Jacob Rodriguez, in my opinion. You could argue Kyle Lewis, too. But these are just guys that, like, I don't know. They just scream Ram to me. I did the same thing last year. I said it. I don't always say it, but when I see it, I can't unsee it, okay? And Jordan Whittington, immediately, when he was coming out of Texas, I was just like, this dude is such a Ram. It's ridiculous. Like, he's got the Texas connection. He's going to be a Ram. I'm not saying all these guys will, but I'm saying I get, like, the vibe from these guys. Of all the top guys that I just mentioned, guy who looks the most Ram to me, it's actually kind of crazy, is Jeremiah Love. Yeah. Well, anyway, on that pointless segment, hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to send you over to the next live stream. Grab your popcorn, your drink, whatever, and we'll do our mock draft Monday on a Tuesday, if that works for you. So that's going to do it for me on this live stream. We're heading on over to the other one. I like keeping them separate for, rewatch. I'm just trying to set this thing up. There we go. So that's going to do it. You guys can stay right here. Once this ends, it'll send you right over to the next live stream. So I'll see you guys in a little bit. Appreciate you.